Hey guys, Larry here, and for today's video, I want to talk about why Steve is currently the most hated character in Smash Ultimate. Hope you guys enjoy, and I'm just gonna get right into it. I lied, this video is sponsored by Into the AM. Into the AM has some amazing graphic tees and just comfortable clothes in general. Like, look at some of the graphic tees. I'm not kidding when I say I'm gonna get these, and you're gonna be seeing me wear these for a while once I do. On September 28th to October 2nd, graphic tees are going to be on sale for up to 25% off. And if you use my code LarryLur, you get an additional 10% off. If you want to check out their website, go to intotheam.com or click the link in the description. Alright, now let's get into it for real. So to start off, Steve was one of the more divisive characters that got announced.
But no! No, I have the creeper! It's not Steve! It's not freaking Steve! If it's Steve, I'm dead! If it's Steve! It's Steve!
Obviously, there was a large majority of people that wanted him to become a playable character, which is shown by his announcement breaking the internet. At the same time, there were also a lot of people who specifically did not want him to become a playable character in Smash. It's odd to say, but along with being one of the most wanted characters for Smash, he was also one of the most unwanted characters. I think one of the main reasons for people not wanting Steve to be a playable character was the possibility that his inclusion in the game meant that someone else that other people wanted to be in the game was less likely to get a spot. Or at least that's what some people thought. Steve being one of the most popular characters that people wanted made people see him as one of the greatest threats for their character not getting in. Something else is that Steve's design isn't really considered cool by most people's standards. I feel like for a lot of people, they could accept the character they wanted not getting in if a character that was similar to what they wanted made it in, and Steve just didn't fit that for most people. Another reason as to why people didn't want Steve to be a playable character in Smash was his moveset. There were a lot of possibilities of what his moveset could be based off of the game Minecart. The possibility of having such a unique and potentially strong moveset made people afraid of how he would affect the competitive scene. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people's fears were correct. Steve currently is widely considered to be the best character in the game for Smash Ultimate. Being a character that has that title, he has many strengths that he can abuse, and a lot of how those strengths are used make him hated by many players. One of the biggest strengths that Steve has, and one of the main reasons he's hated, is his blocks. This is probably the most versatile move that's ever been created in Smash's history. It's a move that literally allows you to create platforms in a platform fighter. With this, Steve is able to create obstacles that the opponent cannot freely move through. Your options when Steve creates a block is to go around it, destroy it with one of your attacks, wait for the blocks to disappear, or depending on where Steve is, and if you have a hitbox good enough, attack him through the blocks. Steve also has to abide by these rules, but due to him being the one that creates the blocks, he's able to position them in spots that are incredibly favorable to him. Mobility wise, Steve is one of the slowest characters in Ultimate, but with the blocks, he's able to greatly improve this flaw and make it less apparent. While he's attacking the opponent, he can create blocks, and with the use of a technique called no impact landing, or kneel for short, he's able to greatly extend his combos, and if executed properly, can have death combos at just about any percent. Another way Steve can use his blocks offensively is by edgeguarding the opponent. Like I said, you cannot move through the blocks, and depending on where the opponent is off stage, Steve is able to place blocks in a way that makes it difficult or impossible for them to make it back on stage. Sometimes, even if they do make it on stage, he's able to checkmate them by punishing them as soon as they recover. Another option Steve can do if he doesn't opt to edgeguard the opponent recovering is set up a ledge trap. Steve has some of the best ledge trapping in the entire game if given enough time to set up something. There's a lot of ways Steve can cover most, if not all, the opponent's options to get off of the ledge. Steve also has a shield break setup he can do using blocks. Defensively, Steve also has very strong options with his blocks. Like mentioned before, he can use blocks to greatly improve his movement. The use of blocks allows him to stall his landings, giving him strong mix-ups to land to the ground or get a reversal on the opponent. Blocks can also be used to help Steve recover, and like I said with his landings, he can get some strong mix-ups with this option. In neutral, certain spots of disadvantage, or even in an advantage state, Steve can create a wall of blocks to make it difficult for the opponent to approach him. This also allows him to gather resources, which I will talk about more later. Even when Steve is at the ledge, he's able to use the blocks to stall and gather resources. Blocks also count as him landing on stage, so he's able to refresh his ledge intangibility doing this and plank. Blocks are crazy, but that's just one move in Steve's arsenal. Another option that Steve can do that can greatly irritate the opponent is his Minecart. Like blocks, it's a very strong and versatile option that has to be respected. It's a solid burst option that can increase Steve's mobility while on the minecart and can be done on the ground or in the air. It can be used as a combo starter, kill setup, or kill move. While Steve is in the minecart, he has knockback based armor. So you can hit Steve, but if your move doesn't do enough knockback, he won't flinch and he can still hit you. Steve also has the ability to jump out of the minecart, which if the minecart is still moving can be a hitbox. In fact, when he's not riding in the minecart, it becomes a command grab that is able to grab grounded opponents and put them in a sort of buried state, allowing Steve to do just about anything he wants to them. You are able to mash out like any other berry, but depending on your percent, it's harder to do. If you get grabbed and the minecart is falling off stage, you're probably going to lose your stock if Steve is close to you. You'll either die from falling and being stuck in the minecart, or if you mash out, you'll air release and Steve will land a spike and edge guard you. There are ways of avoiding the minecart like breaking it if you do enough percent, dodging, or jumping over it. But the Steve player is able to move while the minecart is moving on its own, so you still need to keep your eye on him as well. Steve's also able to jump back into the minecart and ride it again. There's a lot of mix-ups he has with this option. There's also the possibility that there's blocks that are restricting your movement and other options. Defensively, it's also a very strong option. I think something that most people don't talk about a lot is the ability Minecart has to block projectiles. If you input Minecart at the right time, it will cancel out any projectile hitbox and Steve will ride in it without him or the Minecart taking damage. Since you can also use Minecart in the air, it's a good reversal option and landing mix-up due to Steve having the option to jump out of it. It's also another option that can help Steve recover. On top of this, if you have the right resources, you can power up the Minecart and make the attack stronger. Steve is a resource character, and due to this, in order for Steve to do the moves I mentioned, he needs to have enough resources to do it. Steve gets his resources by using the move Mine, which while doing he cannot attack. So in order to mine, Steve will try to put himself in spots where the opponent cannot interrupt him very easily. This is where Steve being able to put up walls comes in handy, and yet another reason why people hate fighting him. Steve basically puts you in a position where it's hard to approach him due to the blocks, so it's best to wait. But you can't wait too long because you're allowing him to gather a lot of resources, which is greatly beneficial to him. At the same time though, Steve has one of the best combo games, so approaching him carelessly can lead to you taking a lot of damage or losing a stock. Though Steve has bad frame data mobility wise, he actually has some of the best frame data attack wise, meaning a lot of his attacks have good startup and very little cooldown, which makes the situation even harder to work around. It also doesn't help that some of the attacks that can help him start combos can be positive on shield. His jab, most of his tilts, aerials, and forward smash can be upgraded using resources, making them stronger. If Steve gets Diamond, which is his strongest upgrade, Steve's kill power becomes significantly stronger and can be comparable to some characters' comeback mechanics. I also want to add this here, his downer is another option he can use that can help him mix up his landing due to him being able to jump off of his anvil, and it's also a really strong kill move. His TNT is yet another solid option he has. It can be used for ledge trapping, set up for shield breaks, and if you step on the switch, it becomes unblockable, meaning you have to dodge to avoid it. Yet another reason people hate Steve is the glitches he has. He has a lot of random glitches, and I think this is due to how unique of a moveset he has. The glitch that most people probably know of is PMLG, which allows Steve to cancel hit stun of certain attacks. The discovery of this technique further sparked the discussion to ban Steve, which is something that some events are doing. I don't think this technique alone made people want to ban Steve, but it's definitely something that caused people to discuss it more. Despite Steve being as good as he is, he does have flaws that if exploited can make him a bit easier to fight that I would like to talk about. Like I said before, Steve is a resource character, and a lot of his important attacks require him to use resources. If he doesn't have iron, he can't use minecart down air, and his down throw becomes weaker. If he doesn't have any material, he can't create blocks, and if he doesn't have specific material, he can't use TNT or even create a crafting table, which Steve needs in order to create or upgrade his tools. It is possible to destroy the crafting table and make him waste resources to spawn another one. In order for Steve to get gold or diamond, two of his strongest resources, he has to mine for a certain period of time, and if he loses his stock before getting that resource, the amount of time required to mine resets. The tools that Steve uses to attack can break and will require him to make new ones using the crafting table. So you could take advantage of him having significantly weaker attacks until he crafts a new tool. Depending on the stage played on, Steve will actually get more or less of certain resources. Also, the stage determines what specific tool he uses to mine, which will make the tool break faster. On Smashville and Town and City, he mines with his axe, meaning his up air and up tilt will have less uses until it breaks. On other stages, he'll mine with his pickaxe, meaning his non-sword forward air and back air will have less uses until it breaks. The only exception to this is Final Destination, where Steve mines with his shovel that doesn't conflict with any of his attacks. Something else pretty notable about Steve is his shield. Due to how he stands while shielding, he's one of the easier characters to shield poke consistently. Another flaw Steve has is his mobility. I know that blocks in Minecart can help him with his mobility issues, but it doesn't completely mask them. I would say this flaw is more of a matchup dependent thing, but it can be extremely difficult for Steve to approach due to his mobility. He's susceptible to being pressured and walled out given the right character and circumstance. Fighter Pass 2 will go down in history as providing us with some of the most overtuned characters in Smash's history, plus Sephiroth. And Steve is the king of this death lineup. His overwhelming popularity led to him being hated before he was even playable in the game, and once people actually figured out how good he was, it was too late. Due to quarantine somewhat halting the competitive scene's development for most parts of the world for a period of time, it wasn't universally known how strong of a character he was. People saw Steve abusing things online, but it was thought to be mostly online gimmicks. Once people came to realize how ridiculous Steve actually is, there was one final patch update left, which basically did nothing to him. I think him along with all the characters from Fighter Pass 2 are the result of what was happening in the world, which caused there to be a lot less feedback and playtesting for the development process. And that is it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and ring the bell. It helps me out a lot and is just a few simple clicks. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.